Okay, so make sure that your calculator is in degrees, radians, and make sure it's in polar, okay? Then we type this in, you notice that the X button becomes your theta and we graph. I just want you to look at that, tell me what you see and graph it. We're gonna play a little bit to where you figure out what these things look like. Now, tell me something you might like to do to this to change it. Should we make the 4 into a 2? Just make it a 2. Now don't hit graph. What do you think will happen? Well, let's hit graph. What happened? It got smaller. How far across is it now? So without me teaching you what happened, can you figure out what the number in the front does? So let's go back. You always got to try a couple. What number would you like to put in front of that now? How about 6? Let's do a 6. Did it follow the pattern you thought? So what can you tell me about the number in front? What does it control? The size, right? Okay, now I heard someone say negative, so let's look at your negative one. Now don't hit graph yet. Let's just go type the second one in. Okay, put it in your mind. Where do you think that's going to be? Okay, let's try. Not so bad, right? Aren't these kind of cool? So make a little sketch so you'll get the idea. Shall we try sine? Let's try sine. Oops. All right, before we do this, now I want you to think. Cosine is which variable, x or y? Cosine was x. And which axis was it graphed on? X. What do you think sine's going to do? All right. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to go up. See how easy this relates if you understand that sine is your y value? And how far up did it go? It went up 4. Why do you think it went up 4? And remember, I want you to have rough sketches. I want you to get the basic idea. We're only going to look at this for one day. All right. Tell me in your mind, what do you think the negative sign is going to do to this? You think it's going to flip it over? And you think it's this, is this one going to be bigger or smaller? It's going to be smaller, right? Let's try. Was that a surprise? That was not a surprise, was it? All right. Now this is a little bit shaped different than that, and we're going to talk about it in a second. Well, these are, what shape did we just graph? What are these called? Circles. Now they're a little distorted on your calculator. Why don't they look exactly like circles on your calculator? Because this axis is 10 and this axis is 10 in each direction, but your calculator is a rectangle. So is it a little distorted? It's a little distorted. So what are these guys? Circles. Not bad, right? And what is the A? A is the diameter. This is all typed on here for you, right? But I don't want you to read it first. I want to play with the graphs. You'll learn it better if we put these in and talk about them. You can see that we have several shapes: a circle, a cardioid, a limachon, and a rose. And we're going to learn how to identify those. So let's look at this guy. I want you to compare all of these equations and tell me what you notice about them. Actually, let's compare these across. These two right here, these two columns, and tell me what you notice is different about this one and this one, and what do you notice is different about this column? Yes. Okay, I want you to focus on the fact that these, not specifically that these are 2s, but they're what? They are, but they're also the same number. See how we have 2 and 2, 2 and 2. Notice here what happens. The numbers are different. I want you to notice that's a way that you can tell these two things apart. So let's type this in like we see it, and let's talk about it. We're kind of just playing right now before we get to the real details. So let's just type it in and tell me what you notice. What does it look like? What shape does it have? Does it look like a heart? Does it look kind of like a heart? Okay, there's a reason it looks like a heart. It's a cardioid. Remember, I'm going to give you detailed notes in a second. We're kind of just playing right now, noticing a few things. And how far is it? It's 4. We will put more details to this shape in just a second. What do you think is going to happen with this one that has a minus? I want you to make an educated guess. You think it's going to switch it? Let's check. You ready? Oh, that was easy, right? And I want this to feel easy. Sometimes people find these scary. Don't worry, I'll make them a little scarier. Now we've got a sine. How do you think this shape is going to change? How is sine going to be different than cosine? What do you think? We kept the numbers the same, so it'll say the same size. Only I'm going to make this sine. What do you how do you think it's going to change? You think sine's going to be going up and down? Let's try. Oh, guess what? It's going up and down. Now remember, the reason it looks more round is because a calculator is skewed, right? Because we've got 10 this way, but this is much wider. And what do you think this one's going to be like? What do you think is going to happen when we put the negative sign in? Let me turn it. What do you think, y'all? What do you think it's going to do? Of course, it's going to flip it over. Now, notice that the plus seems to look like an upside down heart, but your calculator really doesn't know that that's a heart and you want it to look like this. So when it's positive, the bigger part is up, right? So does that make sense with your little sketches? Not a bad introduction. This is just an introduction before we take real notes. Okay. Now, tell me what you notice. I want you to look for a pattern in these two columns. Tell me how these two columns are different. And it's not just the number itself. Look for a pattern. Take a second and look for a pattern. Does anyone see a pattern with the numbers? I see one. Do you see one? They're different. On both sets, they have different numbers. Do you notice any pattern with those numbers? How are these alike versus these that are, the left column is different from the right column? What's the major difference? And I don't mean the number itself, like 3 or 5, but what pattern do you notice with the two numbers? Come on. Okay. Go more. What's true about all of these versus all of these? Look at order. Look at the order of the numbers. What do you notice? Look at the order of the numbers. How are they different in the two columns? Come on, look for the pattern. Do you notice in this column you get a bigger number than a smaller number? So this goes big to small. And what do you notice about these numbers right here? Small to big. I don't know if that matters. Actually, I do know, but I'm not going to tell you. Let's see if that makes a difference. So let's go in and play. All right, so we're going to type this in. What's that look like? Kind of looks like a cardioid, doesn't it? But it has like a little dent there, right? So let's, how far over to the left does that go? 5. Okay. I'm just kind of sketching what I see because I'm trying to look for patterns. And that's at 1. Because the idea when we're done today is that you know what that looks like without really working. Now, what do you think is going to happen when we change this to a plus sign? You think it's going to flip over? See, you're already learning stuff. It did. Yay. This is all about patterns, right? Still 5. If this were not a COVID world, you wouldn't have a calculator for quizzes and tests over this. So we're trying to learn the shape now. Look what we have here. What do you think that's going to look like? I want you to guess before you just hit graph. You're trying to think. What do you think is going to change for these two have exactly the same number and sign? How do you think it's going to change when we change it from cosine to sine? When we change it to sine, you think it's going to be up and down instead of right and left? Look at you knowing this stuff. Did it still go down 5? And still up 1? So it's exactly the same. It's just a different direction. Now I can't help but notice it's just like this one. When sine had a negative, the big part was on the bottom. So this is a positive. Do you think the big part's just going to be on top now? You already guessed that? You did, didn't you? Let's go look. And there you go. All right, anybody have a guess as to what's going to happen when a smaller number comes first? Anybody? Got a guess? This is hard to guess, right? Okay, let's go in. Let's look. 2 plus 5. Anybody have a guess before we hit graph? This is getting exciting now. All right, let's look. Oh, a loop. Now, did it still go over? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Are you noticing a pattern with how big it is? Why do you think it's 7 across? Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how big is this? 1, 2, 3. Now I need you to think about that. I can't draw these. Now I want y'all to come up with a rule for me. I want you to think about this. Yes, sir. There we go. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 5 and 2 is 7. And where is this loop? 1, 2, 3. How do you think you could get a 3 out of 2 and 5? You think that's a rule? How can we figure it out? Well, we're going to try it again. But this time, let's try a minus. What do you think's going to happen when you put a minus in there? Yeah, I mean, this is getting so ridiculous. Y'all know how to do it. I don't need to be here, right? Okay. Do you think you have an easy pattern to see? I have so much trouble sketching these. There we go. Does everyone see the pattern? It's not scary, is it? Now, how do you think life's going to change for us if we make this a sine instead of a cosine? We think it's going to be exactly the same, but going up and down? And you have it. And what do you think is going to happen when we make it negative? Let's go check the negative out. Oh, it works. Your pattern works. Okay. So are these pretty easy? Do you feel like you see the pattern with the numbers? If this is 7, we're going over 7, and then we've got 2 minus 5, we get a 3 in there. Pretty easy, right? And are you getting the idea that positive cosine goes right, negative cosine goes left? Positive sine goes up, negative sine goes down, right? So somehow you want to remember when we go from small to big, we have a loop. When we go from big to small, we have no loop. That's one distinction you need to commit to memory. So how can you remember that? I used to say chief little big loop. And if it was little and then big, it made a loop, but I don't know. Somehow this year you have your notes, so I would make sure that I wrote on these a big distinction. So now we've got a rose. Tell me what's different about a rose without reading the words, because that's too much stuff. It's better to draw. What's different about the rose and the limitones? In the equation, what do you notice is different? No plus or minus. Okay, so this is more like a circle. How is a rose different from a circle? How would you be able to identify that? What's the difference? Check it out. Look for a pattern. What's the difference between a rose and a circle? Yes, they both have numbers in front, but this one has a number. So I'm gonna kind of notice that. Now we need to figure out what that number tells us. Let's not read the instructions. Let's just play. It's much better to play. So let's go put a rose in here. And by the time we're done, you're now going to be able to make Valentine birthday cards for anyone. You just write some equations and they get it. All right, let's try. Wait, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't hit it yet. Just type in the numbers. Don't do it. Let's guess. What do you think it's going to look like? What do you think the difference between cosine and sine are going to be? Come up with something you think is going to happen before we do it. What do you think is going to be a difference? What do you think cosine? We don't even know what this looks like. Let's go. Is that not the cutest thing you've ever seen? Do you think these are evenly spaced apart? They are. Okay, now I want you to do the 4. How do you think the 4 is going to be different than the 3? You cheated. You peeked up there. You were supposed to guess. It's got 8 petals. Don't peek at the words. That's for you to read later. I want you to think. Okay, that's a mess. I hope yours looks better than mine. What does the 2 tell you? That's the size of petal, right? You're out 2. All right, now I want you to go, let's go through and guess, and then I'm going to give you guys a minute to look at them. How many petals does this one have? How many petals does this one have? That's our guess. How many? Okay, let's stop with that. Now you guys go check. Go in and check. It does have 5. Are they evenly spaced apart? They are, and I struggle with this. I'm not that great at art. Okay, pretend like that looks anywhere real. Now this one has a 4. How many petals you think it has? Or this has a 2. How many petals you think it has? Okay, you're right. Now, before we move on, I want you to think about what you just saw. On the odd ones for cosine, what do you notice always? Where is one petal always? On the x-axis. So if I went back, y'all, it's not on here. But if we went back to this one and put a negative sign in the front of it, what do you think would happen? If I did -2 cosine 3 theta, what do you think it would look like? Come on, give me a guess. What do you think it would look like? Do you think it would just be flipped over and we'd have a petal on the negative side? So what would a negative sign in front do? It just flips it over the y-axis, right? Okay. How do you think sine is going to look different than cosine? Here's cosine, always having a petal on the x-axis when it's odd. How do you think sine's going to be different? You think it's going to have a petal on the y-axis? Let's try. Oh, y'all, I accidentally hit 300, I think, or 30. Oh, I knew I did something weird. And you're right. It has a petal on the y-axis. But notice, this is positive sine, but the big part is going down. It feels backwards. Does it feel backwards to you? Does it feel backward? Okay, but as long as you know it feels backward, make notes on here, write things down. What do you think? It's not on here, but what do you think would happen if we inserted a negative sign right there? Where do you think that petal would be? Guess what? It's in the top of its negative. Okay. What do you think the 4 theta is going to look like? Anybody have a guess? All right, are you ready? Here we go. What does it look like with 4? Do you think it's going to have 8 petals? You think all the evens are doubled? Because we notice 2 was 4, 4 was 8. So do you think this is going to have 8? Okay. Well, you know what? Oh, wow, it's got 8. What do you notice, though, about the petals? I want you to tell me a difference. Look at cosine. Look at your little sketch. Look at cosine versus sine and tell me the big difference. Yes. Well, really 4 on axis. So a good test question for me, I didn't write the test, but a question I would put on it, I might show you both these pictures and ask you which one is sine, which one is cosine, right? So we want to notice all these differences. All right, let's try the last 2. What do you think this one's going to look like? How many petals? How many petals? Odd seems to be the right number. Let's check. Oh, look, there's 5. Hey, wait a minute, wait a minute. What happened? What is unexpected about this sketch? From here to here, tell me what's unexpected about this sketch. Yeah, we were thinking positive because we noticed when we stuck a negative sign here, it went up. But this doesn't have a negative sign and it went up. What do you think we need to check next to get a pattern? It wasn't this number that made the change, right? That just makes a petal longer. So 3 was down, 5 was up. What other one do you think we need to check? What do you think I need to put in here to make a, which one? Well, we got 3, we got 5. Where should we stop before 9? 7. Which way do you think 7 goes? You think 7 goes down? Let's check. 7 went down. What do you think is going to happen if I put a 9 in? You think it's going to go up now? Let's try. Interesting. So we might want to make a note that 3 goes down, 5 went up, 7 went down, 9 went up. So what conclusion, use your deductive reasoning, and what rule would you make up for yourself? Yeah, right? Well, what if we try 11? Well, hold on, that's even. 6 is even. There's definitely a difference between evens and odds. We did 9, let's try 11, because now I just have to know. Which way do you think 11 goes? Down. Now let's try 13. Up, you can't see it. So it basically alternates. If you were to do negative, you would start up. Would they still alternate? Yeah, we got some alternating going on. So remember, the big picture for this section is for you to notice patterns. Not scary, icky math that makes you run home and cry, but just patterns of cool things you could draw. All right, let's do this last one. What do you think it's going to look like? What do you think this is? How many petals? You think it's going to have 4 petals? Will they be on the axis or not on the axis? Let's try. Oh, look, it's got 4 petals and they're not on the axis. Excellent work, my dear sleuths. Okay, do you feel like you have that you notice patterns here. And if you had this to look at, you'd be like, I'm not scared of this stuff. You can't frighten me, right? Now, if you'll notice, there's words up there, but I wanted you to just do it and write your own words down. It's much better. But if you forgot, the fancy words are up there, like A is the length and non-dominant axis from pole. Does that make any sense to any of you? Those words? We graphed it and we can see on all of these what that looks like. So we came up with numbers and we looked and we figured it out ourselves, right? So anyway, now let's look. This is kind of just to prepare you for the lesson. We're going to do a little bit of your notes. We don't need to do them all because I covered a lot of it. But in your notes, you have this. So let's see. We're going to kind of practice a few together, and then I'll let you work. So what do you think this is going to look like? And you can cheat and you can use your notes. What I want you to be able to tell me is it a circle, a cardioid, a limestone, or a rose? One of your objectives is to identify. So what is this creature? What is this creature? You can cheat. You can look at your notes that we did. That's okay. It's okay to cheat. If it doesn't have a plus or minus, you know it's a circle or a rose, right? It has a number here. So this is a rose. How many petals? 4 petals. On axis or not on axis? Not on axis. Because we just practiced and you learned the stuff I want to teach you. We're going to try it now. See if you got it. We noticed that the signs were not on the axis with the roses, didn't we? Maybe you should put a note, right? We wrote that. None on axis, right? Okay, so do you know what it roughly looks like? 4 petals. See? Not scary, right? What is this guy? Is that a rose also? How many petals? 8 petals, because we notice when it's even, it doubles. Are they on an axis? Yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now they don't look anything monstrous like mine. They're all the same size petal, right? They're all the same. Aren't these kind of fun? Because you can draw some. Well, we'll play in a minute so you can make someone you love a pretty birthday card. All right. All right. We're doing rough sketches, right? We're not going to do scary stuff and plug in numbers. We're just rough sketches. What shape is this? A rose or a circle? It's a rose. And how many petals? 3 petals. And based on the thing, do we have one on an axis? Look at your 3. We just practiced with that. Which way does it point? Down. So we know. Pretend like mine are the same size. Please don't judge my lack of artistic ability. We noticed that with the sign, if I did a 5 now, it would go up. And if I did a 7, it would go down. And we noticed that they flip, right? Okay, what about the cosine? What shape is this guy? Rose or circle? Rose. How many petals? 5 petals, because when it's odd, it stays the same. When it's even, it's doubled, right? Now, are we going to have any on an axis? How many will be on an axis for an odd cosine? One. One on axis. And since this is positive, will it be on the right side or the left side? There we go. See how we think about these, right? So there's a 1. And the rest are as evenly spaced out as you can get them. Okay, y'all, please don't look. Mine has a swollen, looks like he broke a thumb. Hit it with a hand. Okay, don't judge me. Do you feel like you get a rose? And if you have your notes to look at, you'd be okay, right? You're making notes on there. All right. What is this creature? The numbers are the same. So what is he called? Come on now. Don't break my heart. Yes, cardioid. Okay. Is it big on the top or big on the bottom? It's positive, so it's big on the top. So it's, I'm going to write that down, big on top, rather than, you know, the positive y-axis. And how large will it be? What did we have to do to get the size of it? Like how many little tick marks do I need? Yes. I need to go up 6, right? And then I make a little heart. Now I may put a few numbers in here with you later, but today I just want you to do a rough sketch. Okay. What shape is this thing? Remember, if the numbers are the same, it's a what? Cardioid. This is cosine, so which way will it go? Which way is the big part? Right or left? Right. And how big is it? It's 4 to the right. Right? Are you allowed to put these in your calculator? Yes. And if you want to get technical, we didn't mention it before. This is 2 up. This is 2 down. This is 1, 2, 3. This is 1, 2, 3. Where did we get those numbers? From these. Okay. Okay, what is this little fella? Okay, what's the name of this guy? He doesn't have anything added or subtracted and nothing next to theta. What is that? It's a circle. Okay, it's a circle. And how big is it? 2. It's cosine, so which axis is it on? It's cosine, so it's on the x-axis. And how far over do I go? 2, right? And we're actually 2 up, right? That one's easy. Okay, lastly, what are these fellas? What is this called? It's the only one left. And every time I see it, I think of limericks and I think of leprechauns. Limachon. And this one, I don't know why that word makes me think of leprechauns, because it looks like limerick, which reminds me of Ireland. Okay, tell me which one has a loop. This goes big number to little number 3 is bigger than 2. This goes little to a big number. It's 2, then 3. So which one has a loop? Okay. If the first number is smaller than the size here, it's going to have a loop. All right. This one's sine. So is it on the x-axis or the y-axis? It's on the y. Is it going up or is it going down? The big part is on the up. So how far up do I need to count? I need to count 5. I know it goes up that big. And then 1, right? Only the 1's coming out instead of going in to form a loop. Now, how far over am I going to go? Right? 3. We kind of didn't do that on the other sheet, but we've got a 3 here, so there we go. It's all right. Draw in your little heart. It looks very much like a cardioid. It's just flattened out a little bit right there. All right. This one is cosine. So does it go up and down or right and left? Cosine goes which way? Right and left. So how far over are you going to count? How far over? 3 and 2. How far do we go? 5. How big this way are your loops going to be? Or how far up and down are you going to be to get the sides of your little heart shape? 2. Notice 3 and 3. I'm going to circle those. 3 and 3. That's giving us our width, right? So this one's a 2 and a 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, instead of going 1 this way, like we did with this one, which way are we going to go with the 1? We're going to come back. We're not going to have it over here. And we're going to have what structure in there? What structure? A loop. Okay. Does everybody see where our numbers are coming from? 3 minus 2 is 1, so we got a 1 here. 3 plus 2 is 5, so we got a 5. And this big number 3 is telling us to go over 3 and over 3. Pretty easy? Are you ready for your test? Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute. And I want you to attempt to match these up.
Miss Coughlin?
Yes.
Did you let Kamia back in the Zoom?
I did. So, y'all take a second. I'm going to pause our recording so people at home can try it. Okay, so y'all look. This is a limosone, and we know that it's going to not have a loop. It's going to open up on the left because cosine is negative, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So you're going to count out 4 spaces. Which picture matches? Only this one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one is E. Okay, put your lines in here so you can see the letters are below the boxes. So now y'all take a second and go through and try to pick them out. I'm going to pause this and give you time to work. Okay, so these went well. And like I said, what I would do is I would find one, like I picked the row, the roses, and I would say, okay, that's all I'm looking at. And I would go find my roses and put those in order. So there's the key for you to have practice with. Attempt to do that without a calculator. Kind of try to get where you can do it without your cheat sheet. And then on your homework that you have today, it's in Class Kick. Don't worry about plugging numbers into these tables. I just want you to do a rough sketch. I'll go over these with you next time. We'll add that because we did a lot today. So I want you to work on your rough sketches. I mean, you guys are able to tell that you have to go 6 and 1 and all of that. Okay.